Ink Ribbon.
If you're like me, you love Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and other classic survival horror games from yesteryear. And if you're also like me, you're starved for new ones. While we have had some amazing indie games, which deserve a whole list of their own, we still have a lot of games that for one reason or another just flew under the radar for most people, and today I wanted to share some with you that you will probably enjoy. Now, I won't be including games that are well known, since this list is about games that most people might not know about, so I won't be including games like Parasite Eve or Dino Crisis. And in no particular order, here are 10 survival horror hidden gems.
Number 10.
Clock Tower. I know at first glance this game might not look that scary, but the original Clock Tower is a fantastic survival horror gaming experience, and you kind of have to play it to understand. You play as an orphan named Jennifer, who is moving into her new home along with her friends and teacher, but of course everything goes wrong almost immediately. The pixel art is fantastic, the sound design is chilling, and the game is filled to the brim with content, having more than 10 endings and different paths that you can take. I will say the game is very slow-paced, so if you're the type of gamer that really prefers action and more fast-paced experiences, maybe this one will require some patience, especially since you aren't controlling Jennifer directly. Instead, you kind of guide her and use the UI to point and click on where to go. This can be very panic-inducing when Scissorman shows up, and you have to quickly think on your feet. If he gets you, it's usually a game over. And you'll be happy to know that this game is getting a remaster for PC and all modern consoles, and it's set to release at the beginning of 2024, so keep an eye out for that.
Number 9.
Disaster Report. So imagine a more action-oriented survival horror experience, but replace all the monsters with natural disasters, and you get Disaster Report. Or if you live in PAL regions, SOS: The Final Escape. There are actually 4 games in the series now, but I would really recommend playing the first one if you want to truly feel that classic feel. Inspired by the novel Japan Sinks, which has gone on to have multiple film and anime adaptations, this game takes place on a man-made island that is built over the ocean, and as expected begins to collapse and implode, causing all sorts of disasters to occur while you try to survive. You play as Keith, a budding young journalist ready to start his new job in the city working for the newspaper, but he doesn't make it very far. Through the game, you'll run into different characters and eventually end up uncovering all sorts of crazy revelations and evil companies doing things they weren't supposed to do, much like the Umbrella Corporation in Resident Evil. So if you enjoy that type of story and interaction, you'll probably have a good time. Keep in mind this game is technically a budget title, so it can look a little unpolished, but I promise the team behind it really put their heart into making this game, and you can feel it when you play. If you want to know more about this series, be sure to check out my video on the Japanese exclusive PSP game that is now playable in English.
Number 8.
Cold Fear. So I'll be very blunt, this game is a straight up Resident Evil 4 clone. One look at its gameplay and I think that's fairly obvious. But this game does do a lot of really cool things, even if it is a little sloppy in some places. To get the complaints out of the way, it doesn't have the polish or the story that you'd want to experience like Resident Evil 4, but there's still a bit there, and my biggest gripe is that there's no map, which really sucks if you're navigationally challenged like me. Aside from that, it has some really fantastic atmosphere that actually made me jump a few times, and one of the most impressive things about this game are the rolling mechanics, where the ship rocking back and forth is handled in a very unique way to prevent all sorts of issues, and ultimately it was a big example of innovative game development solutions. And apparently this game was a big deal too, because it was in development hell with several publishers including Sony, Namco, and eventually Ubisoft, and even had its film rights purchased by a major studio. Unfortunately, the game sold terribly due to Resident Evil 4's insanely successful run blowing it out of the water. No pun intended. You play as a Navy SEAL answering a distress call and end up fighting mostly Russian mercenaries that have turned into monsters by a parasite, and the only way to kill them is to destroy their brains. Yeah, it's what you'd expect. It's worth a play if you just want to have a fun, retro experience, and if you don't judge it too hard, I think it's a really enjoyable game.
Number 7.
Fear Effect. I've mentioned this game before, but I cannot stress enough how good this game is in terms of story and polish. You play as a team of mercenaries, being Hannah, Deke, and Glaz, and you are trying to rescue the daughter of a powerful triad. Set in Hong Kong in the year 2050, the game is dripping with what we would today refer to as cyberpunk aesthetics. So if you like Ghost in the Shell or The Matrix, you'll love the atmosphere and setting here. But the game also has some supernatural elements and some really great puzzles and music that fans of games like Silent Hill will really enjoy. The one thing about this game is its gameplay isn't the best. It's a bit clunky and also has a lot of trial and error moments where even if you take the slightest wrong step, it's an instant game over. And with save points being kind of scarce, I'd recommend playing it on an emulator with save states if you can. The story is very mature and features sexual themes, gore, and all the other things our parents warned us about, so if that tickles your pickle, then definitely check it out.
Not too long, Deke. I've killed men for much less.
It also has a sequel, but I've never played it, so I have no idea if that's improved at all. If you've played the sequel, let me know in the comments if it's worth checking out.
What do you want? Working girls only.
I'm home.
Okay, come in.
Number 6.
Deadly Premonition. Okay, I really debated on whether or not I should mention this game, but I couldn't help it. The reason I hesitate is because it's a horror game for about 5% of the game, and then the rest of the time it's it's kind of hard to explain other than to say it's basically the video game adaptation of the TV show Twin Peaks.
And see if they want to make a statement.
Are you serious?
I never joke about matters like this.
Oh my god.
You play as an FBI agent who drives around a small town getting to know each and every townsperson, all the while trying to solve the murder of a young woman. The game is classified as survival horror, but it's more of a life sim with some survival horror flavor. Imagine Silent Hill, but everyone is alive and as weird as you'd expect them to be.
Mr. Francis York Morgan, haste won't lead you to what you seek. Keep your eyes focused on your footing as we speak. So says Mr. Stewart.
The story is quirky, the characters are memorable, and it's really well written. But it is a slow-paced game that is hit or miss for people. Very simply put, you will either love this game or absolutely hate it. There is no in-between. This game actually holds the Guinness World Record for the most critically polarizing survival horror game, and I completely understand why. It's genuinely hard to talk about this game because it's something you just need to experience for yourself, but I really enjoyed it as a gamer, and I think it's a game I will never forget. I still think about it sometimes when I make my coffee.
Mr. Morgan, Do you want a refill?
Yes. Thank you.
Is the coffee that good, Mr. Morgan?
Coffee is a vital, investigative tool. I know exactly what to do now.
Number 5.
D2. I'm really excited to tell you about this if you've never heard of it. This Dreamcast game is a weird one, but a good one. It's probably the only survival horror game that I know of that has a silent protagonist, too. You play as a woman named Laura who survives a plane crash brought on by crazy cult of dudes with guns, and you have to survive through not only the cold Canadian wilderness, but also encounter some of the freakiest monsters. I will always remember this disturbing scene with the flight attendant.
Is everything all right, ma'am? Our current location is above Canada from a Prialis star cluster on red high-heel shoes. The turbulence is the original ETA at St. Charles. Autopilot engaged in the galley right on schedule. Please bring your seatbelts careful and upright with the flying. Get a whole chance to come around from
Gameplay is in third person while you're exploring, and it switches to first person while you're in combat. So if you liked Resident Evil Dead Aim, you'll be right at home. You have to occasionally go hunting to get meat in order to restore health. You can level up and increase Laura's health. You can even take pictures. Also, this game was the first time I remember seeing completely uncensored honkers in a video game, though it happens in kind of a creepy scene, so it's not exactly sexy. But that should let you know that this game isn't as cheesy as it looks, and it's definitely worth checking out if you like survival horror.
Number 4.
Carrier. Next is yet another Dreamcast game, but this one is not quite as good. Or maybe it's even better, depending on what you're into. If you love the infamous voice acting and cheese of the first Resident Evil game, then you'll love what Carrier has to offer.
Jack. Leonard, are you okay? Hang on.
Looks like my leg's no good.
Your leg? Don't move it. I'll take care of it.
I would describe this as a mix of Resident Evil 1 and Dino Crisis, especially given the cool sci-fi aesthetic. You play as a Special Forces member named Jack, who ends up on an aircraft carrier, hence the name, and slowly starts to realize that the carrier and its crew are infected with a virus, sprouting all sorts of monsters and chaos. One really cool thing about this game is a mechanic where you're given a scanner that can detect objects in a room, but also allows you to scan NPCs, and if it displays safe, they are healthy, but if it displays danger, they are infected. Not much else to say about this game. It's kind of like the game version of a B horror movie, but it's still pretty charming.
Number 3.
Tormented Souls. Are you one of those gamers that enjoy setting the puzzle difficulty in Silent Hill to hard? Are you really good at memorizing and navigating the dark corridors in almost any horror game? Do you like body horror and a spooky mansion setting? Well then, this game is for you. This game is a love letter to retro horror, and it's made by a small team of Chilean developers. While it's ambitious, it's also really well executed. All the things I mentioned before though, I'm not joking. This game is intense and difficult. If you are stupid and bad at navigating like I am, you might want to use a guide when you play it. But either way, this is definitely worth playing, and as I was writing this, I found out they're working on a sequel, which is awesome.
Number 2.
Galerians. I have always heard about this game, but never had a chance to check it out. But I played this on my little portable emulator thingy that I can't remember the name of when I was on a flight a few months ago, and I was really shocked at how much I enjoyed it. This one is really for the fans of the PS1 classic fixed camera, pre-rendered background games, but with a little bit of a different twist. You play as Rion, who wakes up in a weird hospital and quickly discovers that he has psychic powers. This game really has that Resident Evil feel, but the twist is that you're fighting scientists and soldiers instead of zombies and monsters.
Return to your room, and you won't get hurt.
I think this also had a much deeper story because when I was initially looking up this game, I found out there was like a movie adaptation. It's even available on PSP. So I think this game was poised to be a really big franchise and maybe fizzled out. Throughout the game, you solve a lot of different puzzles, some traditional and some using new abilities you acquire over time that allow you to access new areas. Unfortunately, I ended up getting stuck and never finished it, but I'd really like to go back and finish it, and that alone tells me that it's a game worth playing. One thing about it, part of the reason I got stuck is that a lot of the areas in the game really do look similar, so it can get confusing to get around. I don't think you guys understand how bad I am with navigation. I don't even know where I am in my house right now.
Number 1.
Silent Hill: Shattered Memories. I know I said I wasn't going to list games that are well known, so to have a Silent Hill game in a Hidden Gems list might be weird, but most people I ask about this game say they know about it but have never played it. I cannot stress enough how much of a unique experience this game is. I'm actually working on a big retrospective video about it, and while researching for it, I searched for days to see if anyone knew of any games that were similar to it, and I could not find a single one. I know it's supposed to be a reimagining of the first game, but if you put that aside and just enjoy it as its own experience, it's probably the most immersive and tactile survival horror game I have ever played, especially if you play it on the Wii. It's hard to explain, even if you watch videos of the gameplay, but if you experience it for yourself, you immediately feel it. It may sound strange, but turning knobs, sliding open cabinets, picking up objects, those little things really suddenly make you feel connected to the world. Now, I know that VR games have kind of made that more of a standard thing, but it's just not quite the same. On top of that is the very cool and very chilling psych profile mechanic where the game psychoanalyzes you the entire time you're playing, and it changes things based on what actions you take. I'm really excited to make my big video on it, but for now all I can say is that I implore you to give it a shot if you haven't played it. If the Wii isn't accessible, then I'd recommend the PSP port because emulating the PS2 version is very difficult, and unless you're rich, buying it is a bit steep. And there you have it. I hope these were some good recommendations from one survival horror fan to another. If you have played any of these, please let me know in the comments, and if there's any other survival horror hidden gems that I didn't mention, let me know so that I can play them and maybe make another video like this. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to check out my other videos, like my list of PS1 hidden gems, and maybe hit that like button if you're feeling jazzy. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and be sure to drink some water. Until next time, I'm Kai Morgan, and as always, thanks for watching Ink Ribbon. And a very special thank you to all of my Patreon supporters and YouTube members. Your extra support means the world to me and helps me keep making content for you guys.